Well, hello everybody out there in internet land. This is Chris from HHN with another exciting episode of Topher's Log. There are a couple of things that I want to get out of the way. First, obviously the pandemic continues to go across the world here. We are, some things are starting to reopen. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but some things are starting to reopen. Florida's starting to reopen. There are things happening afoot. Sea Walk has partially reopened. Disney Springs is going to partially reopen next week. The theme parks are now required to give a sort of plan of action to the powers that be to sort of detail how they're going to reopen their parks and how to keep people safe and do the social distancing thing, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into a pissing match, pissing contest, with other people who believe that it's not the right time, it is the right time. I'm just saying that this is what's going on. We do know that Horror Nights is also still continuing. They keep pumping out, construction permits and things of that nature. I still am of the mindset that Horror Nights is actually going to get canceled, but that is just that's my mentality. But things are starting to move forward slowly here, so I guess that's a good thing, depending on what side of the aisle you fall on. It is what it is. I will not be going down to City Walk anytime soon. I personally, I'm going to give it some more time, probably until July-ish, because I still don't think that the parks are going to open until late June, early July anyway. So I'm just going to give some time there because it is what it is. But anyways, that's just just wanted to touch base on that a little bit too. Also, I did not do a video last week. I apologize. I took a little bit of a break. Last week was my birthday, and I just sort of took a mental sort of week. Not really off. I still had to work or whatever, but just took it easy. And word of advice: do not have a birthday during a global pandemic. It's no fun. It is no fun. I never thought in my lifetime that I'd be like, well, what do you want to do for your birthday? Let's get in the car and drive nowhere. Let's just drive around in the car. That's basically what we did. We just drove around in the car. We did go down. We went down to International Drive. We waved at Universal Studios. We waved at SeaWorld. We waved at the Convention Center. We waved at the new Universal site there. That's what I did on my birthday. So things are moving forward. We'll see how it goes in the coming weeks, but that's that update. So Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice has been a property this year that has been rumored since the start. It's been talked about since the start. I said in a previous video that I was avoiding talking about certain properties this year because I have some controversial opinions about them. One of which I mentioned Haunting of Hill House, but I did talk about the Haunting of Hill House coming to the event last year. It was one of the first videos I did last year. You can go back and watch that if you so choose. Another one that I kind of don't really care about at this point is Beetlejuice. Now, for a couple different reasons. Probably going to ruffle some feathers here. But I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Beetlejuice at the parks. I'm not a fan of the more obsessive sort of theme park fan that exists out there at Universal. The people that, they attach themselves to things like the Bill and Ted Show, or in this case, the Beetlejuice Graveyard Review Show. And they sort of do things like stock performers and sort of, they take the fandom to a different level. So when it comes to the Beetlejuice character, I sort of have a sour taste in my mouth when it comes to the show and the fandom that it sort of produced and that whole thing. Even to this day, when I see Beetlejuice walking around the parks, I kind of actively avoid the character because I just don't want to have anything to deal with it. I sort of feel the same way about the Bill and Ted Show. It sort of created this really weird niche of a fan base that takes it a step too far, and they do things like stock performers and things of that nature, which I cannot stand. It's one thing to be obsessed with something, like I've said in the past. I mean, here I am sitting in my room alone talking to a camera about Halloween Horror Nights, an event that may or may not happen this year anyway, but but it is what it is. But there's a next level step that you could take that fandom, which I don't really appreciate. And Beetlejuice kind of falls into that area for me. That being said, when it comes to the movie, now I don't just consider the movie to be one of my favorite movies. I think the movie is also one of the best films ever made. I think that that is sort of prime early Tim Burton. If you were studying his filmography, I mean that is kind of when I think of Tim Burton, I usually think of three films, and that's Edward Scissorhands, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and Beetlejuice. You can also throw Ed Wood in there too, but Ed Wood is kind of where he sort of shifted a little bit in his filmmaking mentality there. But those are the three films that I kind of associate with Tim Burton. Every time I think of his name, it's one of those three films that pop into my head. And as a child of the 80s, I was obsessed with there was a handful of films that I used to watch on VHS on repeat incessantly. It was Return of the Jedi, Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, Jaws 3 for some reason was one that I have a nostalgic attachment to. And Beetlejuice is another one. I used to just constantly, that thing would be on repeat in my VCR all the time. And still to this day, I love the film. I think the film is great. It still holds up today. And the movie itself has also created sort of a subculture that, kind of this obsessive subculture that is kind of weird or whatever. But it is what it is. In terms of the movie coming as a house, I'm going to talk a little bit about Ghostbusters from last year, because when Ghostbusters was announced last year, there was sort of a split of people that really wanted the property to come and other people who didn't because they felt it was too comedic. Beetlejuice, while I think if we're going to split the two, Beetlejuice I think has the imagery to go for it. Ghostbusters had some things here and there. Of course, you have the demon dogs and the ghosts themselves. But what the house sort of did is they sort of embraced the cartoony nature of the ghosts. With Beetlejuice, you have Tim Burton's incredible designs that you can sort of play around with. But like Ghostbusters, I really don't consider... Ghostbusters I think is more horror. It's got more of the horror aspect to it than I think Beetlejuice does. Beetlejuice, while it tries to have the horror with the sort of the sandworms and stuff, the designs of the monsters and stuff, and even Beetlejuice himself, I think ride this line of not necessarily scary, but they're sort of this weird spooky imagery or whatever. Now I will admit, as a child, when I first saw the part of the movie where the Maitlands do their face thing, where Gina Davis does the eye thing, or the mouth thing, and then the eyes and the mouth and stuff like that. There are images that as a child used to frighten me, but as an adult, that stuff, I just don't consider that really to be scary. I think it's more stylized than Ghostbusters. Like Ghostbusters was more straight up horror. Beetlejuice is more of a stylized thing, but that's to be expected with somebody like Tim Burton. I don't know, as a whole, even with my trepidations about, the character itself and whatnot, Beetlejuice for me just wouldn't, in my mind, translate well to a house. I think you're going to have to do a lot more reaching to sort of get, a flow of horror to go into the house. I mean, you can look at this stuff for days. Look at the designs and stuff like that, or go to the when you're in like the netherworld. You can sort of do that type of stuff, I guess. But in terms of like straight up horror, I think it'll be more of the same when it comes to Beetlejuice as it was for Ghostbusters, where you're just kind of walking through and just experiencing the movie and not necessarily getting scared by what you're seeing, which I think is kind of a mistake. It is what it is. But Beetlejuice, coming to the event for the 30th, I think makes some sense, because Beetlejuice, of course, was a staple of Horror Nights when the event first began. He was, at Fright Nights. He was very heavily featured at Fright Nights. He had his own stuff. Never had a house, of course, but he had all his shows and whatnot. So for that, it kind of does make sense. If their line of thinking was to bring Beetlejuice because of that, I think that that makes perfect sense. I just don't know how I would feel, especially coming off of Ghostbusters, a house that I enjoyed for the sort of feat that it did, which was transporting you into the world of the movie. I thought was done really well. But in terms of doing kind of creating this horror element out of the very little horror that Ghostbusters had, walking through the house, I don't think was done that well. I think they can sing all the praises they want about the house, transporting you through the movie, but not necessarily like, creating, scares and things of that nature. I think they sort of drop the ball when it comes to that aspect. But with Beetlejuice, I sort of see that same sort of vibe happening. And for me, I'm just not kind of into that. I think that you're going to have a lot of people who are going to be on board with Beetlejuice being a house, and you're going to have a lot of people that aren't because of the Ghostbusters thing and the results that house had put out, and even the people that were trepidatious about it before that. I think those same people are going to be transported over to the Beetlejuice camp. There's a level of excitement there for me personally because I do love the film a lot. And I would like to see that world come to life. I just don't know if I would be over the moon about it. Maybe perhaps if Ghostbusters hadn't happened and we were just doing Beetlejuice this year without having a preconceived notion of what happened with Ghostbusters, I might be a little bit more on board with Beetlejuice becoming a house. But because we have Ghostbusters as sort of this precedent to make this style of horror comedy sort of into a house, I don't know. I just don't. I don't think it was confidence enough for me to have for Beetlejuice to come as a house. But I love the movie, and like I said, some of my more trepidation, my trepidations. I used that word before. Let's not do that again. My reservations about the character because of its history with the diehard fandom and stuff like that. Like that also is weighing on my mind as well. Which I don't really dig, but it is what it is. But anyway, so Beetlejuice. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people out there that'll be excited for Beetlejuice. I mean, it'd be interesting to see like I said, Tim Burton's designs come to life. I think would be interesting. But again, you're just walking through the movie, and I don't want to just walk through the movie. I want to have an experience that scares me a little bit, but also, has the laughs and stuff like that, which I don't think Ghostbusters really kind of achieved. So I think Ghostbusters achieved the walking through. It literally took you and you were walking through the movie, but not sort of the horror side of things, the scary side of things. I don't think that they succeeded in that aspect, and I think Beetlejuice might actually be the same thing. So. But that's it. So yeah, Beetlejuice, I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that want Beetlejuice to come, because people love that character, of course, like I alluded to earlier. I'm just kind of on the fence about it, but it is what it is. So anyway, guys, I think that's going to be it for me this week. We talked about Beetlejuice. Yay! I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. Perhaps I'll have my, like I said, I've been working on my amended top 10 or favorite 10 houses list. We'll see if I can get that done. And I still have that Horror Nights event in my back pocket, but I am waiting to see what happens with the actual event itself. We'll see how that goes. I have thoughts about that, but I'm not going to get into that argument, especially right now. It's not going to happen. But anyway. So that's it for me, guys. Hopefully I'll see you guys next week. I might not be able to do a video next week, but we'll see how that goes. But anyway, I'll talk to you guys later.